In this video, we'll focus in on the sympathetic nervous system and how it's structurally arranged. So as we've said in previous videos that in the sympathetic and parasympathetic, we need preganglionic fibers and postganglionic fibers, and there needs to be that synapse before you reach the target. So and we're looking at the sympathetic. So the preganglionic neurons, they originate in the lateral horns. So here I've drawn a cross-section of the spinal cord. And remember from previous chapters that we have the white matter, and then internally we have the gray matter, and that we have the horns. So let's say this is posterior. Those are the posterior horns, the anterior horns. But in the middle section of the spinal cord, we have an additional horn that sticks out of gray matter, and those are the lateral horns. So the lateral horns are where the preganglionic fibers for the sympathetic nervous system, where they have their cell bodies, and from there they would travel out with motor fibers on the motor route. Now, let's head here and start talking about something called the sympathetic chain. So what I've drawn here is the spinal cord, and running beside the spinal cord, it's a bilateral structure, is the sympathetic ganglionic chain. So what we have are a series of ganglia, and these ganglia are connected. They are connected to each other. So it forms this chain-like structure. And what we're going to see is, in terms of the sympathetic nervous system, not all, but many of the fibers will leave the spinal cord, will enter the sympathetic chain and synapse to fulfill their requirement for synapsing. And then they have a few choices. They could head off from that area, or they could travel up the chain and head to a higher location. They could come in, head down, synapse, and head to another location. So the chain gives you the opportunity for when preganglionic fibers come in, that they could be distributed to a higher level, stay at the same level, go to a lower level, and while synapsing in the chain. But then there's another group we're going to see that actually the presynaptic neurons come in, they enter the chain, but they don't synapse anywhere in the chain. They pass through, but they will have a specific ganglia later on that they will synapse to form their postsynaptic ganglia. So let's talk more a bit about this. Okay, so here we go. Here is our cross-section of the spinal cord. You can tell that's the dorsal aspect because that's the dorsal root ganglia, aka the posterior root ganglia. So we know that's sensory coming in. This is motor coming out. You can see that's the posterior horn, anterior horns, posterior horn back there. And here we can see the lateral horns. As I said, the lateral horns only exist where we have sympathetic fibers that are going to be originating from the spinal cord. So in this case, there's a preganglionic neuron cell body, and it will exit and follow along with other motor fibers, because remember, the autonomic nervous system is a part of the motor system. And then it will travel along that anterior route. It will enter and become part of the spinal nerve. And remember, spinal nerves are mixed because you have sensory going in, motor coming out. And it enters the spinal nerve. And then what it does is, just as it starts its journey along the spinal nerve, it will take a little off-ramp and enter the sympathetic ganglia. Now this off-ramp we're going to call the white ramus communicans, if you want to call it white ramus communicans is its full name. Now, why is it called the white ramus? It's called the white ramus because these fibers are myelinated. So here we have the preganglionic fiber has come off the spinal cord, entered the spinal nerve, used the white ramus, has now entered into the sympathetic chain. What we're soon going to see is at this point it has a choice. It could come in, it could synapse at this point, And then it takes another ramp and then re-enters the spinal nerve to head to its target. And of course, at this point, it would be a postsynaptic neuron, right? So it'd be postganglionic neuron. We'll see that there's other options, that it can come in at this level, it can go up, synapse in the ganglia higher up, go to a high level, can come in, travel down, synapse at a lower level, then head out to a structure lower in the body, or, as I previously said, it could come into the chain, not synapse in the chain, pass through, but it will have to synapse before it gets to its target. And we'll see that's called a splanchnik. I know it's a funny word. It means basically kind of blood, guts, gore. Okay, so I just want to keep that one short just to give a little framing for where we're going to go next.